The fluorescent lights flickered ominously as Maya Johnson stared at the emergency alert, flashing across every computer screen in the Peterson Associates corporate tower. System breach detected. All data compromised. Estimated damage, $47 million and climbing. The numbers kept climbing, red digits bleeding across the screen like a digital hemorrhage that threatened to drain the life from Chicago's most prestigious consulting firm. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya's fingers moved instinctively toward her keyboard, muscle memory from years of training kicking in before her conscious mind could catch up. Around her, chaos erupted. Senior partners shouted into phones. Junior associates ran between offices like headless chickens, and the entire 42nd floor descended into the kind of panic that destroys careers and bankrupts companies. But Maya remained still, her dark eyes scanning the error messages with the methodical precision of someone who understood exactly what they were looking at. Everyone out. We need to shut down all systems immediately. David Chen, the firm's head of technology, burst through the glass doors of the main conference room, his usually pristine appearance disheveled and sweat beading on his forehead. This is a coordinated attack. We're looking at complete data loss across all client accounts. Maya watched as David began ordering people to unplug computers, his movements frantic and desperate. She recognized the fear in his voice, the terror of someone who was in charge but completely out of his depth. It was the same tone she'd heard years ago during her time at Boston University's cybersecurity lab, when graduate students faced problems that required more than textbook knowledge to solve. "Maya, you need to evacuate your workstation too," called Lisa Wang, her immediate supervisor, as she hurried past with an armload of paper files. David says touching any computer could make the breach worse. Maya nodded absently, but her attention was fixed on the pattern scrolling across her screen. The attack signature was elegant, sophisticated, and strangely familiar. She'd seen this kind of work before, back when she was consulting for the FBI's cybercrime division during her graduate internship in Seattle. The methodology was textbook. Advanced persistent threat, but with modifications that suggested the attackers had inside knowledge of Peterson Associates' specific security protocols. This wasn't random. This was personal. Maya Johnson had always been invisible in plain sight. At 28, she possessed the kind of understated competence that corporate America consistently overlooked. Her colleagues at Peterson Associates saw her as the quiet analyst in the corner cubicle, the one who processed data efficiently and never caused problems. They had no idea that she held dual master's degrees from Boston University in cybersecurity and advanced mathematics, or that she'd spent 2 years working with federal law enforcement before deciding that corporate consulting offered better work-life balance. What they definitely didn't know was that Maya came from a family where excellence was the baseline expectation. Her father, Robert Johnson, had been a lead engineer at NASA before transitioning to private sector aerospace consulting. Her brother Carlos worked in Silicon Valley, designing security protocols for companies whose names couldn't be mentioned in casual conversation. The Johnson family didn't just solve problems. They anticipated them, dissected them, and eliminated them with the kind of systematic precision that turned complex challenges into routine victories. Maya had inherited more than just intellectual capacity from her family. She'd absorbed their approach to crisis management, their belief that every problem contained the seeds of its own solution, and their unwavering confidence that preparation, combined with clear thinking, could overcome almost any obstacle. These weren't qualities that showed up on annual performance reviews, especially when her official job description involved data entry and client report formatting. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd deliberately chosen to work below her capabilities. After years of high-pressure consulting in Denver and Phoenix, Maya had wanted something stable, predictable, and safe. Peterson Associates had offered exactly that. A comfortable position that paid well enough, didn't require her to travel constantly, and allowed her to maintain the kind of personal life that had been impossible during her previous career. But as she watched her colleagues panic around her, Maya realized that safety was an illusion. The skills she'd tried to leave behind were exactly what the situation demanded, and every instinct trained into her by years of crisis management was screaming that David Chen's approach was not just wrong, but catastrophically dangerous. Maya had spent enough time studying network intrusions to recognize the patterns playing out on her screen. This wasn't a smash-and-grab operation designed to steal data and disappear. The attackers were establishing persistent access, creating backdoors that would allow them to return at will, and systematically mapping the company's entire digital infrastructure. Shutting down the computers wouldn't stop the attack. It would simply drive it underground where it could continue undetected. More troubling was the timing. The breach had begun during the weekly senior partner meeting, when most of the company's leadership was gathered in one room. The attackers knew Peterson Associates' schedule, their security protocols, and their standard response procedures. This level of inside knowledge suggested either a compromised employee or months of careful surveillance. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her brother Carlos, seeing news reports about major corporate breaches in Chicago. Everything okay at work? Even from 3 time zones away, Carlos maintained his protective older brother instincts. But his message reminded Maya of something crucial. If this attack was making news, it wasn't just targeting Peterson Associates. The attackers were operating on a scale that suggested coordinated action against multiple targets. As David Chen continued his frantic shutdown procedures, Maya quietly opened a secure partition on her computer that he didn't know existed. Years of federal consulting had taught her the value of maintaining isolated systems that could operate independently of corporate networks. What she found in the isolated environment confirmed her worst fears. The attack wasn't just ongoing, it was accelerating. The attackers had gained access to client databases containing sensitive financial information for companies across multiple industries. Peterson Associates didn't just handle routine business consulting. They managed strategic planning for defense contractors, healthcare systems, and financial institutions. The stolen data could compromise national security, disrupt medical services, and destabilize financial markets. Maya realized she was facing a decision that would define not just her career, but her sense of professional responsibility. She could follow David Chen's orders, evacuate her workstation, and let the attack continue unopposed. It was the safe choice, the one that would protect her cover as just another data analyst who followed instructions and avoided conflict. Or she could reveal capabilities that she'd kept hidden for 2 years, acknowledge expertise that would fundamentally change how her colleagues perceived her, and accept responsibility for stopping an attack that was beyond David Chen's ability to handle. The choice became clear when she noticed the attackers had begun targeting the company's backup systems. They weren't just stealing current data. They were trying to eliminate Peterson Associates' ability to recover from the breach. Within hours, the company would face complete data loss across all client accounts, a scenario that would likely result in bankruptcy and the loss of hundreds of jobs. Maya thought about her colleagues, most of whom were good people trying to do honest work in an increasingly complex world. She thought about Lisa Wang, who had been genuinely kind during Maya's first months at the company. She thought about the administrative staff who depended on their paychecks to support their families, and the junior associates who were just beginning their careers. She also thought about her father's advice, delivered during her high school years when she'd been frustrated by being the smartest person in her advanced placement classes. Intelligence without action is just potential energy. The moment you choose to use what you know to help others, potential becomes power. Maya had spent 2 years converting her power back into potential, hiding her capabilities behind the comfortable anonymity of corporate routine. But as she watched the attack vectors multiply across her screen, she realized that some moments demanded more than comfort. Some situations required people to step forward and acknowledge what they were truly capable of accomplishing. Maya made her decision. She was going to stop this attack, save her company, and accept whatever consequences came from revealing that the quiet analyst in the corner cubicle was actually one of the most qualified cybersecurity experts in the building. But first, she needed to understand exactly what she was up against. The attackers had shown impressive sophistication, but they'd also made a crucial mistake. They'd assumed that Peterson Associates was defended by conventional corporate security measures. They had no idea that Maya Johnson was analyzing their every move with the trained eye of someone who'd spent years hunting people exactly like them. As chaos continued to swirl around her, Maya began the methodical process of turning the hunters into the hunted. The attackers thought they were facing a helpless target. They were about to discover that they'd chosen the wrong company to attack on the wrong day, in the presence of the wrong analyst. Maya cracked her knuckles and began to type. The real battle was just beginning. The first thing Maya noticed about the attack vectors was their surgical precision. While Chen and his team scrambled to contain what they perceived as random chaos, Maya's trained eye detected patterns that revealed a level of coordination that made her stomach clench with recognition. These weren't opportunistic hackers looking for quick financial gain. This was the work of professionals who understood corporate infrastructure better than most of the people who built it. Maya's fingers moved across her keyboard with practiced efficiency, her personal security protocols automatically masking her activities from the compromised network. Years of federal consulting had taught her to operate in hostile digital environments, and Peterson Associates' breached systems might as well have been enemy territory. She established secure tunnels through encrypted pathways that the attackers hadn't discovered, creating invisible corridors that allowed her to observe their activities without detection. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The attackers hadn't just penetrated Peterson Associates systems. They had achieved what cybersecurity experts called domain dominance. They controlled the company's email servers, file repositories, customer databases, and financial systems. More alarming, they were systematically downloading client information for companies that represented critical infrastructure across the Midwest. Maya recognized several client names from her previous work with federal agencies. Lakefront Medical Systems provided healthcare technology for hospitals throughout Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Great Lakes Manufacturing supplied components for military vehicles and civilian automotive systems. Continental Energy managed power grid operations across 5 states. The stolen data could compromise hospitals, disrupt transportation networks, and potentially cause rolling blackouts affecting millions of people. The scope of potential damage forced Maya to confront an uncomfortable truth. This wasn't just a corporate crisis anymore. It was a matter of national security, and she was possibly the only person in the building qualified to understand the implications. Around her, the evacuation continued with increasing desperation. Senior partners gathered in hushed conversations, their voices carrying the unmistakable tone of people discussing bankruptcy lawyers and crisis management firms. Junior associates packed personal belongings with the hollow-eyed expression of people who suspected they might not have jobs to return to tomorrow. The administrative staff moved through their routines with mechanical precision, as if maintaining normal activities could somehow prevent the catastrophe unfolding around them. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya caught fragments of conversation that confirmed her worst fears about the company's response strategy. Chen was coordinating with external cybersecurity consultants who wouldn't arrive for at least 6 hours. The FBI's cybercrime division had been notified, but their response time for corporate incidents typically measured in days, not hours. Meanwhile, the attackers were extracting terabytes of data every hour, and their persistent access meant they could return to cause additional damage even after the initial breach was supposedly contained. The professional part of Maya's mind began automatically developing a response strategy. She'd handled similar situations before, though never while pretending to be a regular employee with no special expertise. The key was understanding that sophisticated attackers like these operated on predictable timelines. They needed time to establish persistent access, map network architecture, identify high-value targets, and execute data extraction. The longer they remained undetected, the more damage they could cause. But they also had vulnerabilities. Professional hackers relied on anonymity and stealth. They avoided direct confrontation with defenders who possessed comparable skills. They expected to encounter conventional corporate security measures, not federal-level cybersecurity expertise. Most importantly, they assumed their targets would respond with panic and confusion rather than systematic counterattack. Maya realized she possessed advantages that the attackers couldn't anticipate. Her federal training had included offensive cybersecurity techniques that went far beyond corporate defensive measures. She understood how to track attackers through compromised networks, how to identify their command and control infrastructure, and how to turn their own tools against them. She also had access to resources that Chen didn't know existed, including contacts at federal agencies who could provide assistance that transcended normal bureaucratic timelines. The decision to reveal her capabilities carried risks that extended beyond her comfortable anonymity. Once she demonstrated advanced cybersecurity skills, questions would inevitably arise about her background, her training, and her reasons for working below her apparent qualifications. Corporate executives had a tendency to become suspicious of employees who possessed capabilities they hadn't disclosed during the hiring process. More significantly, engaging in active cyber warfare against professional attackers could escalate the situation in unpredictable ways. The attackers might respond by attempting to cause physical damage to corporate infrastructure, targeting individual employees, or expanding their attacks to Peterson and Associates clients. Maya's actions could transform a data theft into something much more dangerous. But as she watched the data extraction accelerate on her monitoring screens, Maya recognized that inaction carried even greater risks. The attackers were moving toward the final phase of their operation, the point where they would attempt to cover their tracks by destroying evidence of their presence. In cybersecurity, this phase often involved deploying destructive malware designed to corrupt or delete entire databases. If the attackers deployed ransomware or data destruction tools, Peterson and Associates would face complete operational paralysis. Client relationships built over decades would be destroyed overnight. The company's reputation would be permanently damaged. Most importantly, the stolen data would be used to target other organizations, potentially causing harm that extended far beyond Chicago's financial district. Maya made her choice with the cold certainty that had characterized every major decision in her career. She was going to stop this attack, protect her colleagues, and accept responsibility for whatever consequences followed. But she wasn't going to reveal her hand prematurely. Professional attackers respected strength and despised weakness, but they feared unpredictability above all else. Maya's counterattack began with reconnaissance. She used her secure access to map the attackers' presence throughout Peterson and Associates' network, identifying their entry points, their command and control communications, and their data extraction pathways. The picture that emerged revealed a level of sophistication that impressed her despite her circumstances. These attackers had spent months preparing for this operation, studying the company's systems, and developing custom tools designed specifically for Peterson and Associates' infrastructure. But sophistication also meant complexity, and complexity created vulnerabilities. The attackers were using multiple layers of encrypted communication to coordinate their activities, but encrypted communications required decryption keys. They were employing advanced persistent threats that maintained constant contact with external servers, but constant contact created detectable patterns. Most importantly, they were operating under the assumption that they faced no serious opposition, which made them careless about concealing their activities from anyone with the skills to understand what they were doing. Maya began her counteroffensive by doing something that would have horrified David Chen if he'd understood what was happening. Instead of trying to block the attackers' access, she started monitoring their communications. Federal training had taught her that the most effective way to defeat sophisticated attackers was to understand their objectives, their capabilities, and their planned timeline before attempting direct confrontation. What she discovered exceeded her worst expectations. The attackers weren't just stealing data. They were preparing to sell it to multiple buyers. Peterson Associates client information was being packaged for sale to foreign competitors, criminal organizations, and entities that Maya's federal training had taught her to recognize as potential terrorist groups. The stolen healthcare data would be used to target medical infrastructure. The manufacturing information would compromise defense supply chains. The energy sector data could enable attacks on power grids. This wasn't corporate espionage. It was economic warfare with implications for national security, and Maya was watching it unfold in real time from her corner cubicle while her colleagues panicked around her. Maya's phone buzzed with another message from her brother Carlos, seeing reports of coordinated attacks across multiple cities. This is bigger than Chicago. Are you somewhere safe? The message confirmed what Maya had begun to suspect. Peterson Associates wasn't the only target. The attackers were conducting simultaneous operations against multiple companies, creating a crisis that would overwhelm conventional response capabilities. Maya understood that she was facing a moment that would define not just her career but her sense of professional responsibility. She possessed the skills to stop this attack and potentially prevent similar attacks against other companies. She had the training to identify and neutralize the attacker's infrastructure. She had the contacts to coordinate with federal agencies in ways that could disrupt the entire operation. But using those capabilities would mean revealing everything she'd worked to keep hidden for the past 2 years. It would mean acknowledging that Maya Johnson, the quiet data analyst, was actually someone else entirely. Someone with a background that most of her colleagues couldn't imagine and capabilities that would fundamentally change how everyone in the company perceived her. Maya looked around the chaotic office one more time, watching her colleagues struggle with a crisis that was beyond their ability to comprehend, let alone resolve. She thought about the millions of people who would be affected if these attacks succeeded. She thought about the hospitals that could be compromised, the infrastructure that could be damaged, and the economic disruption that could result from this coordinated assault on American business. Maya made her final decision with the quiet certainty that had characterized every important moment in her life. She was going to war, and the attackers who thought they were facing a helpless consulting firm were about to discover that they'd made a very serious mistake. Maya's transformation began with a single keystroke that activated protocols she hadn't used in 2 years. The familiar interface of her federal-grade cybersecurity toolkit materialized on her screen, hidden beneath layers of encryption that made it invisible to both the compromised corporate network and the attackers who thought they controlled it. For the first time since the crisis began, Maya allowed herself a cold smile. The hunters were about to become the hunted. The first phase of her counterattack required surgical precision. Maya needed to establish secure communication with external resources without alerting the attackers to her presence. Years of federal training had taught her that the most dangerous moment in any cyber operation was the transition from passive observation to active engagement. One mistake, one detectable signature, and sophisticated attackers would either disappear entirely or escalate to destructive measures that could cripple Peterson and Associates permanently. Maya began by creating what federal agencies called a ghost tunnel through the compromised network. Using techniques that weren't taught in corporate cybersecurity courses, she established encrypted pathways that appeared to be routine system maintenance traffic. To any observer, including the attackers, her activities would look like automated background processes rather than deliberate human action. It was digital camouflage at its most sophisticated level. Through her ghost tunnel, Maya established contact with Jennifer Smith, her former supervisor at the FBI's cybercrime division. The secure message she sent was brief but contained enough coded language to convey the severity of the situation. Prairie fire, multiple vectors, national infrastructure. Immediate assistance required. Prairie fire was the code word for coordinated attacks against critical infrastructure, the kind of scenario that triggered federal emergency response protocols. Jennifer's response came back within minutes. Authorization granted. Full support available. What do you need? The speed of the reply told Maya everything she needed to know about how seriously federal agencies were taking the coordinated attacks. Somewhere in Washington, people with security clearances far above her former level were making decisions about resource allocation and response strategies. Maya's second message was longer and more specific, requesting deep packet analysis, attribution intelligence, and coordination with private sector response teams. Have active monitoring of hostile command and control infrastructure. Can provide real-time tactical intelligence. She was essentially asking for the kind of support typically reserved for nation-state level threats. But Maya suspected that was exactly what they were facing. While waiting for federal resources to mobilize, Maya began the delicate process of mapping the attackers' operational infrastructure. Professional cybercriminals relied on complex networks of compromised servers, encrypted communication channels, and redundant command structures. Dismantling such networks required patience, technical expertise, and the kind of systematic approach that distinguished federal-level cybersecurity operations from corporate defensive measures. Maya's analysis revealed that the attackers were using a sophisticated botnet consisting of compromised servers across multiple countries. Their command and control infrastructure included primary servers in Eastern Europe, backup systems in Southeast Asia, and communication relays scattered across dozens of countries. The distributed nature of their operations would make them difficult to disrupt using conventional law enforcement approaches. But Maya had access to techniques that transcended normal jurisdictional limitations. More troubling was the discovery that the attackers possessed detailed intelligence about Peterson and Associates security protocols, employee schedules, and system vulnerabilities. This level of insider knowledge suggested either a compromised employee or months of careful surveillance. Maya began cross-referencing the attack timeline with personnel records, looking for patterns that might reveal how the attackers had obtained their intelligence. Around her, the corporate crisis continued to escalate. Chen had managed to convince senior management to implement a complete network shutdown, a decision that would normally be prudent, but was actually counterproductive in this situation. By taking Peterson and Associates systems offline, they were eliminating Maya's ability to monitor the attackers' activities while doing nothing to prevent continued data extraction through the persistent access channels that had already been established. Maya watched with professional frustration as Chen announced his plan to restore systems from backup servers, apparently unaware that the attackers had already compromised the backup infrastructure. When Peterson and Associates came back online, they would be walking directly into a trap that would give the attackers even greater access than they'd possessed before the shutdown. Maya realized she could no longer maintain her passive role. The corporate response was not just inadequate, it was actively dangerous. Every decision being made by people who lacked the expertise to understand the situation was making the crisis worse. If she continued to remain silent, Peterson Associates would face complete destruction while potentially enabling attacks against other companies throughout the region. Maya made a decision that would alter the trajectory of her career permanently. She was going to reveal her capabilities, take control of the response effort, and accept responsibility for the consequences. But she was going to do it in a way that maximized her effectiveness while minimizing the chaos that would inevitably result from her colleagues discovering that the quiet analyst in the corner cubicle possessed federal-level cybersecurity expertise. Maya stood up from her workstation for the first time since the crisis began, her movement deliberate and confident. Around her, conversations paused as colleagues noticed the change in her demeanor. There was something different about Maya Johnson, something that hadn't been visible during her 2 years of carefully maintained anonymity. She carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who knew exactly what needed to be done and possessed the skills to accomplish it. Maya walked directly to the conference room where Chen was coordinating with senior management, her stride purposeful and unwavering. Through the glass walls, she could see the panicked expressions of executives who were beginning to understand that their company faced existential threat. Chen stood at the head of the table, gesturing frantically at printouts of system logs that told him nothing useful about the sophisticated attack unfolding throughout their network. Maya knocked once on the conference room door and entered without waiting for permission. The conversation stopped immediately as all eyes turned toward someone who had never attended senior management meetings and had no apparent reason to be interrupting crucial crisis management discussions. "Mr. Chen," Maya said, her voice carrying a calm authority that cut through the room's tension, "your current response strategy is going to destroy this company." The statement was delivered with such quiet certainty that no one immediately challenged it, though several executives exchanged glances that suggested they thought Maya had suffered some kind of stress-induced breakdown. Chen's face flushed with irritation and embarrassment. "Maya, this isn't the time for data analysts to offer opinions about cybersecurity. We're handling this situation with professional consultants who understand. Your professional consultants are 6 hours away," Maya interrupted, "and the attackers will have completed their extraction and deployed destructive malware long before any external help arrives. Furthermore, your plan to restore from backup systems will give them administrative access to every client database in the company." The room fell silent. Maya's statement was delivered with technical precision and displayed knowledge that no data analyst should possess. Several executives looked confused. Chen appeared increasingly angry, but Lisa Wang was studying Maya with the dawning recognition that something fundamental had changed about her employee. "Maya," Lisa said carefully, "how do you know about our backup restoration procedures?" "That information is restricted to senior technology staff." Maya had reached the point of no return. Her next words would either establish her credibility or destroy her career, but the situation had progressed beyond the point where she could maintain her carefully constructed anonymity. "Because I've been monitoring the attackers' activities since the breach began," Maya replied. "They've compromised your backup infrastructure, established persistent access to your financial systems, and they're currently extracting client data for companies that represent critical infrastructure across the Midwest. This isn't corporate espionage. It's economic warfare, and your current response is ensuring their complete success." Chen stood up abruptly, his face dark with anger. "That's impossible. Our systems are completely shut down. No one has access to anything, let alone the ability to monitor attacker activities. Maya, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to leave this room immediately before you cause additional problems." Maya looked directly at Chen with the kind of steady gaze that federal agents used when dealing with people who were out of their depth. "Mr. Chen, the systems you think you've shut down are still communicating with external servers through encrypted channels that your monitoring tools can't detect. The attackers are using advanced persistent threats that maintain constant contact with their command and control infrastructure. Your shutdown procedures have eliminated your ability to observe their activities without actually preventing them from continuing their operations. The technical accuracy of Maya's statement was immediately apparent to everyone in the room, even those who lacked cybersecurity expertise. David Chen's confident assertions about complete system shutdown suddenly seemed less credible when confronted with someone who clearly understood the underlying technology at a level that surpassed his own. "Who are you?" asked Robert Harrison, Peterson Associates managing partner. The question was delivered with the kind of sharp focus that successful executives used when they encountered unexpected variables in critical situations. Maya took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. "My name is Maya Johnson, and I hold dual master's degrees in cybersecurity and advanced mathematics from Boston University. I spent 2 years consulting with the FBI's cybercrime division on cases involving attacks against critical infrastructure. I've handled situations exactly like this one, and I know how to stop these attackers before they cause irreversible damage to this company and its clients." The silence that followed Maya's revelation was absolute. Every person in the room was processing the implications of discovering that their quiet data analyst possessed expertise that exceeded anyone else in the building. Robert Harrison leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from crisis management mode to strategic assessment. "Ms. Johnson," he said slowly, "if you possess the qualifications you claim, why have you been working as a data analyst for the past 2 years? Maya had expected this question and had prepared an answer that was both honest and strategic. "I wanted a stable position that allowed me to maintain work-life balance after years of high-pressure federal consulting." Peterson Associates offered exactly that, and I had no intention of revealing my background unless circumstances demanded it. Lisa Wang spoke up, her voice carrying a mixture of amazement and concern. "Maya, you've been handling routine data entry tasks for 2 years. We had no idea you possessed advanced cybersecurity expertise. Why didn't you apply for a position that matched your qualifications?" "Because I was tired of the constant stress and irregular schedule that comes with cybersecurity work," Maya replied. "I wanted to contribute to the company's success without having to deal with crisis situations. Unfortunately, crisis situations have a way of finding people regardless of their preferences." David Chen had been growing increasingly agitated during this exchange. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice rising. "Even if Maya has some cybersecurity background, we can't just hand over control of our crisis response to someone who's been hiding her qualifications for 2 years. We need professional consultants with proven track records and appropriate certifications." Maya turned to face David Chen directly, her expression calm but implacable. "Mr. Chen, your professional consultants are currently stuck in traffic between O'Hare Airport and downtown Chicago. By the time they arrive, analyze the situation, and develop a response strategy, the attackers will have completed their objectives and disappeared. Meanwhile, I'm offering you immediate assistance from someone who has successfully handled identical situations for federal agencies." Robert Harrison held up a hand to stop David Chen's response. "Ms. Johnson, assuming we accept your offer of assistance, what specifically are you proposing?" Maya had spent the past hour developing a comprehensive response strategy that would neutralize the immediate threat while preserving evidence for subsequent legal action. "I propose a 3-phase operation. First, we identify and isolate the attackers, command and control infrastructure while maintaining the appearance of continued system vulnerability. Second, we trace their data extraction pathways and implement selective countermeasures that will corrupt their stolen data without alerting them to our activities. Third, we coordinate with federal agencies to disrupt their operational infrastructure and potentially identify the individuals responsible for the attack. The room remained silent as executives processed Maya's proposal. The level of sophistication she was describing went far beyond conventional corporate cybersecurity measures and suggested capabilities that most of them couldn't evaluate. "Ms. Johnson," said Patricia Williams, the company's chief financial officer, "what you're describing sounds like offensive cyber operations. Are you suggesting that Peterson and Associates engage in what amounts to cyber warfare?" Maya smiled for the first time since entering the conference room, and there was something coldly professional about the expression. "Ms. Williams, Peterson and Associates is already engaged in cyber warfare. The difference is that currently, you're losing. I'm offering to change that dynamic." David Chen made one final attempt to maintain control of the situation. "This is completely outside normal corporate procedures. We need board approval, legal review, and coordination with our insurance providers before undertaking any unconventional response measures. Maya, I appreciate your offer of assistance, but we need to follow established protocols." Maya looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each executive in turn. "Mr. Chen, your established protocols are designed for conventional business problems. This is not a conventional business problem. This is a coordinated attack against critical infrastructure that happens to be using Peterson and Associates as an entry point. Your choice isn't between following protocols and taking risks. Your choice is between allowing these attackers to succeed completely or accepting help from someone qualified to stop them." Robert Harrison leaned forward, his expression indicating that he was approaching a decision. "Ms. Johnson, if we authorize you to take control of our cybersecurity response, what assurances can you provide that your actions won't make the situation worse?" Maya's answer was delivered with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced similar questions from federal officials during much higher-stakes situations. "Mr. Harrison, I can't guarantee that my actions won't involve risks, but I can guarantee that an action will result in the complete destruction of this company's client relationships, the theft of data that could compromise national security, and the bankruptcy of Peterson and Associates within 6 months." The managing partner studied Maya for a long moment, clearly weighing factors that went beyond immediate cybersecurity concerns. Finally, he nodded decisively. "Ms. Johnson, you have authorization to implement your response strategy. Mr. Chen, you will provide Ms. Johnson with complete access to our technical infrastructure and full cooperation from the IT staff." David Chen's face went through several changes of expression before settling into resigned anger. "Fine, but I want it. On record that this is completely outside normal procedures, and that I advised against taking this approach." Maya nodded acknowledgement of David Chen's position while internally calculating how quickly she could implement countermeasures that would prevent further damage to Peterson and Associates systems. "Mr. Chen, your concerns are noted. Now, I need immediate access to your network monitoring tools, your backup system configurations, and a secure workstation that isn't connected to the compromised corporate network." As the meeting broke up and executives dispersed to handle various aspects of the expanding crisis, Maya realized that she had just crossed a threshold that would permanently alter her relationship with Peterson and Associates and her colleagues' perception of her capabilities. The quiet data analyst who had spent 2 years maintaining carefully constructed anonymity no longer existed. In her place stood someone who would be expected to solve complex problems, handle crisis situations, and demonstrate expertise that exceeded most corporate cybersecurity professionals. Maya had wanted a simple, stable career that allowed her to contribute without drawing attention. Instead, she had just volunteered to lead what amounted to a military-style cyber operation against professional attackers who wouldn't hesitate to escalate if they felt threatened. But as Maya walked back to her workstation to begin implementing her response strategy, she felt a familiar surge of professional satisfaction. For 2 years, she had suppressed capabilities that defined her identity in favor of comfortable anonymity. Now, faced with a situation that demanded everything she could offer, Maya was finally free to be herself again. The attackers who thought they were facing the helpless consulting firm were about to discover that Maya Johnson was not just another corporate employee. She was a weapon that had been disguised as a data analyst, and she was about to demonstrate why federal agencies had sought her expertise for the most complex cybersecurity challenges. Maya sat down at her workstation and began typing with the focused intensity of someone who understood that the next few hours would determine not just the survival of Peterson Associates, but potentially the security of critical infrastructure across multiple states. The real battle was about to begin, and Maya intended to win decisively. Maya's secure workstation hummed to life with the quiet efficiency of military-grade hardware that most corporate environments never encountered. Within minutes, she had established encrypted connections to federal databases that Chen didn't know existed and activated monitoring protocols that revealed the true scope of the coordinated attack against Peterson Associates. What she discovered made her previous assessment seem optimistic. The attackers weren't just targeting Peterson Associates. They were conducting simultaneous operations against 17 companies across 6 states, creating a pattern of coordinated assault that suggested state-sponsored resources and planning. Maya recognized the signature of what federal agencies classified as Advanced Persistent Threat Group 47, a sophisticated organization that intelligence analysts suspected of connections to foreign military units specializing in economic warfare. Maya's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Jennifer Smith at the FBI. Confirmed at PT-47, National Security Implications. You have full federal support and emergency authorization for counteroffensive operations. Sending you classified intelligence package now. The message included access codes for intelligence databases that Maya hadn't used since leaving federal service, resources that would give her unprecedented insight into the attackers' capabilities and previous operations. The classified intelligence painted a picture that was both encouraging and terrifying. APT-47 had been operating for nearly 3 years, conducting attacks against companies involved in defense contracting, energy infrastructure, and healthcare systems. Their methodology was consistent: infiltrate corporate networks, establish persistent access, extract sensitive data, and then sell that information to multiple buyers including foreign governments, criminal organizations, and competitors seeking industrial espionage advantages. But a PT-47 had never faced direct opposition from someone with Maya's background and federal authorization. Their previous victims had been defended by corporate cybersecurity teams with conventional training and limited resources. Maya possessed capabilities that were typically reserved for nation-state level cyber warfare, and she was operating with federal support that eliminated most legal and jurisdictional constraints. Maya began implementing her counteroffensive strategy with the systematic precision that had characterized her federal work. Phase 1 involved creating what cybersecurity professionals called a honey trap, a collection of fake systems and databases that would appear valuable to the attackers while actually serving as monitoring platforms that would reveal their operational methods and communication protocols. The honey trap required sophisticated programming that made fake systems appear authentic to automated scanning tools, while embedding invisible markers that would allow Maya to track any data the attackers extracted. She wrote code that created false financial records, fake client databases, and simulated backup systems that would provide the attackers with seemingly valuable information while actually feeding Maya intelligence about their extraction methods and storage locations. While her honey trap initialized, Maya activated the second phase of her operation: deep penetration of the attacker's command and control infrastructure. Using techniques that weren't taught in civilian cybersecurity programs, Maya began tracing the attacker's communication pathways back to their source servers. This process required patience and technical expertise that went far beyond corporate defensive measures. But Maya had spent years perfecting these skills during her federal consulting work. Maya's analysis revealed that APT-47 was using a network of compromised servers across 12 countries to coordinate their attacks. Their primary command servers were located in a data center in Moldova, with backup systems in Vietnam and communication relays scattered across compromised systems in North America and Europe. The distributed nature of their infrastructure was designed to make law enforcement response difficult. But Maya had access to international cooperation agreements that most corporate cybersecurity teams couldn't invoke. Maya placed a secure call to Michael Chen, her former colleague at the National Security Agency, who now worked with international cybercrime task forces. The conversation was brief but comprehensive. "Michael, I need coordinated response against APT-47 infrastructure in Moldova, Vietnam, and secondary targets across NATO countries. Federal authorization confirmed. Timeline is immediate." Michael's response indicated the level of priority that federal agencies were assigning to the coordinated attacks. "Maya, we've been tracking APT-47 for 18 months waiting for an opportunity like this. You have full international support. Moldova and Vietnam operations will begin within 2 hours. NATO cooperation is already authorized. What do you need from us?" Maya smiled as she realized the scope of resources being mobilized to support her operation. "I need real-time intelligence on their communication protocols, confirmation when their primary servers go offline, and coordination with domestic law enforcement for any physical infrastructure located in the United States. Also, I need authorization to deploy offensive countermeasures that might cause permanent damage to their operational capabilities." The authorization Maya requested represented a level of cyber warfare that corporations rarely encountered. She was essentially asking for permission to destroy the attackers' infrastructure rather than simply defending against their assault. Michael's response came back within minutes. "Authorization granted. Full offensive capabilities approved. Show them what happens when they target American infrastructure." Maya's offensive preparations were interrupted by a commotion outside the conference room where Peterson and Associates executives were coordinating their crisis response. Through the glass walls, she could see David Chen gesturing frantically while pointing toward her workstation. Several senior managers appeared to be arguing, their expressions indicating disagreement about something significant. Lisa Wang approached Maya's workstation with an expression that mixed concern with curiosity. "Maya, David is telling the senior partners that you're conducting unauthorized cyber attacks against foreign servers. He's demanding that we shut down your access immediately and return to conventional response protocols." Maya looked up from her programming work, her expression calm despite the complexity of the operation she was managing. "Lisa, what David doesn't understand is that conventional response protocols are designed for conventional attacks. APT-47 isn't a conventional threat. They're a state-sponsored organization conducting economic warfare against American companies. The response requires capabilities that go beyond corporate cybersecurity measures." Lisa sat down in the chair beside Maya's workstation, clearly struggling to process the transformation of her formerly quiet employee. "Maya, I need you to help me understand what's happening. 3 hours ago, you were processing client reports. Now you're apparently conducting international cyber operations with federal authorization. How is that possible?" Maya saved her work and turned to face Lisa directly, recognizing that her supervisor deserved a more complete explanation than she'd provided during the crisis meeting. "Lisa, my background includes 2 years of consulting with federal agencies on cases involving attacks against critical infrastructure. I developed capabilities that corporations don't typically need. But I also developed contacts and clearances that can be activated during national security situations. Lisa's expression shifted as she began to understand the implications of Maya's revelation. Are you saying that you've been working here under some kind of false identity? That you're actually a federal agent? Maya shook her head. I'm not a federal agent. I'm a consultant with specialized expertise who wanted a normal corporate job after years of high-pressure government work. But when situations like this arise, I can activate federal resources and clearances that allow me to respond in ways that corporate employees normally can't. Lisa was quiet for a moment, clearly processing information that challenged her assumptions about her employee and the situation they were facing. Maya, David is arguing that your activities are putting the company at legal risk. He's saying that conducting cyber attacks against foreign targets could result in criminal charges or international incidents. Maya's response carried the authority of someone who understood legal frameworks that most corporate executives never encountered. Lisa, what I'm doing is authorized under federal emergency response protocols for attacks against critical infrastructure. The legal framework for my activities was established years ago specifically for situations like this. David's concerns are based on misunderstanding the legal authorities that apply during coordinated cyber attacks. Before Lisa could respond, Robert Harrison entered the area on Maya's workstation, his expression indicating that he was prepared to make executive decisions regardless of David Chen's objections. Ms. Johnson, I need a clear assessment of our current situation and your progress toward resolving it. Maya activated a display screen that showed real-time monitoring of the attackers' activities alongside her countermeasures. Mr. Harrison, the good news is that we've successfully identified and isolated the attackers' command and control infrastructure. Federal agencies are preparing to shut down their primary servers in Moldova and Vietnam. We've also established monitoring of their communication protocols that will allow us to track their activities across multiple targets. Robert Harrison studied the display with the focused attention of someone who understood that critical business decisions often depended on technical information he couldn't fully evaluate. What's the bad news? Maya highlighted different sections of her monitoring data as she explained the complexity of the situation. The bad news is that Apt-47 has been operating for 3 years and has compromised dozens of companies across multiple industries. Shutting down their current operation won't eliminate their capability to conduct future attacks. We need to destroy their operational infrastructure permanently and identify the individuals responsible for coordinating their activities. Robert Harrison's expression indicated that he was beginning to understand the scope of what Maya was proposing. Ms. Johnson, are you suggesting that Peterson Associates become involved in what amounts to international law enforcement operations? Maya's answer reflected the reality of modern cyber warfare and the limitations of conventional legal frameworks. Mr. Harrison, Peterson Associates is already involved in international law enforcement operations, whether we acknowledge it or not. A PT-47 is using our compromised systems to attack other companies and critical infrastructure. We can either participate in stopping them or continue serving as an unwilling platform for their operations. The managing partner considered Maya's explanation while studying the technical displays that showed the scope of the coordinated attacks. Ms. Johnson, what do you recommend as our next steps? Maya had been developing a comprehensive strategy that would eliminate the immediate threat while preventing future attacks against Peterson Associates and similar companies. I recommend that we complete the destruction of a PT-47's operational infrastructure while simultaneously implementing defensive measures that will make Peterson Associates an unattractive target for future attacks. This approach will protect our company while contributing to broader efforts to disrupt state-sponsored cyber warfare. Robert Harrison nodded slowly, clearly recognizing that Maya's proposal represented the most effective path forward despite its unconventional nature. Ms. Johnson, You have my authorization to proceed with whatever measures you consider necessary. I'll handle any concerns that Mr. Chen or other staff members may have about our approach." Maya felt a surge of satisfaction as she realized that Peterson and Associates leadership was prepared to support operations that went far beyond conventional corporate cybersecurity measures. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I'll need approximately 4 hours to complete the offensive operations and implement permanent defensive measures." As Robert Harrison returned to coordinate with other executives, Maya activated the final phase of her counteroffensive strategy. Her honey trap had successfully attracted the attackers' attention and provided detailed intelligence about their extraction methods. Federal agencies had confirmed that operations against a PT-47's primary infrastructure would begin within 1 hour. Maya was ready to launch coordinated attacks that would destroy the attackers' capability to conduct future operations. Maya's offensive tools included sophisticated malware that she had developed during her federal consulting work, programs designed to infiltrate and destroy the kind of distributed infrastructure that APT-47 used for their operations. These tools were classified at levels that prohibited their use in most corporate situations, but Maya's federal authorization eliminated normal restrictions and allowed her to deploy capabilities that most cybersecurity professionals never encountered. The coordinated attack began with simultaneous strikes against a PT-47's command and control servers in Moldova and Vietnam. Maya watched in real time as federal agencies implemented coordinated takedowns that eliminated the attacker's primary communication infrastructure. Within minutes, a PT-47's coordinated operations across 17 companies began to collapse as their control systems went offline. But Maya's most sophisticated countermeasure was still initializing. She had developed a program that would trace every piece of data that APT-47 had extracted from Peterson Associates and other companies, locate their storage systems, and systematically corrupt the stolen information in ways that would make it useless to potential buyers. This operation required capabilities that existed at the intersection of cybersecurity and intelligence work, skills that Maya had developed during her most classified federal projects. Maya's corruption program activated across a PT-47's entire storage infrastructure, systematically identifying and destroying terabytes of stolen data that represented 3 years of economic espionage activities. The program was designed to work invisibly, corrupting data in ways that would appear to be natural system failures rather than deliberate sabotage. By the time APT-47 realized what was happening, their entire repository of stolen information would be worthless. While her corruption program worked, Maya received confirmation that international law enforcement operations had successfully identified and arrested 12 individuals connected to a PT-47's operations. The arrests included the group's primary technical coordinator, 2 individuals responsible for selling stolen data to foreign buyers, and several people who had provided logistical support for their attacks against American companies. Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Jennifer Smith. A PT-47 infrastructure completely destroyed. Storage systems corrupted. Primary operators in custody. Outstanding work. Federal agencies are requesting that you consider returning to consulting. Work on a permanent basis. The message represented recognition of Maya's capabilities at the highest levels of federal cybersecurity operations. But Maya's most important achievement was the permanent protection of Peterson Associates against future attacks. Her defensive measures included advanced monitoring systems that would detect infiltration attempts before they succeeded, automated response protocols that would isolate and eliminate threats without human intervention, and intelligence sharing. Agreements with federal agencies that would provide early warning of coordinated attacks against corporate targets. Maya also implemented personnel security measures that would prevent the kind of insider intelligence that had enabled a PT-47's detailed knowledge of Peterson Associates operations. Her investigation had revealed that the attackers had obtained detailed information about the company's security protocols through social engineering, attacks against employees who didn't recognize the significance of seemingly innocent questions about corporate procedures. David Chen approached Maya's workstation as she completed her defensive implementations, his expression indicating that he was prepared to acknowledge the effectiveness of her unconventional approach. "Maya, I owe you an apology. When you first revealed your background, I thought you were overreaching and potentially making the situation worse. But the federal agents who briefed us an hour ago made it clear that your actions prevented damage that could have destroyed Peterson and Associates and compromised critical infrastructure across multiple states." Maya looked up from her final system configurations, recognizing that David Chen's acknowledgement represented more than personal recognition. "David, I understand your concerns about following established procedures. Under normal circumstances, those procedures are appropriate and effective. But APT-47 represented a threat that required capabilities beyond conventional corporate cybersecurity measures." David Chen sat down beside Maya's workstation, clearly interested in understanding the technical aspects of her operations. "Maya, the federal agents mentioned that you destroyed 3 years of stolen data from dozens of companies. How is that possible? I thought that once attackers extracted data from corporate networks, it was permanently compromised." Maya smiled as she recognized an opportunity to share knowledge that could improve Peterson and Associates' cybersecurity capabilities. "David, most corporate cybersecurity focuses on preventing data theft rather than pursuing stolen data after extraction. But sophisticated attackers like APT-47 store stolen information in ways that make it vulnerable to counterattacks if you understand their infrastructure and possess the technical capabilities to reach their storage systems." David Chen's expression indicated growing appreciation for the complexity of Maya's operations. "Are you saying that stolen data can be recovered or destroyed even after attackers have successfully extracted it from corporate networks?" Maya's answer reflected years of experience with offensive cybersecurity operations that went far beyond corporate defensive measures. "David, stolen data is only valuable if it remains intact and accessible. Attackers like a PT-47 rely on sophisticated storage and distribution systems that can be targeted if you understand their architecture. My federal training included techniques for tracking, infiltrating, and destroying those systems." David Chen was quiet for several moments, clearly processing implications that extended beyond the immediate crisis. "Maya, Peterson Associates has been thinking about cybersecurity as a defensive challenge. But you're describing capabilities that sound more like offensive military operations." Maya nodded as she recognized that David Chen was beginning to understand the evolution of cybersecurity from defensive measures to active operations against sophisticated threats. "David, modern cyber warfare requires both defensive and offensive capabilities. Companies that limit themselves to defensive measures will always be vulnerable to attackers who possess offensive capabilities. The only way to achieve real security is to demonstrate that attacks will result in consequences that exceed any potential benefits." David Chen's next question reflected strategic thinking about Peterson and Associates' future cybersecurity approach. "Maya, would you be interested in helping us develop more advanced cybersecurity capabilities? It's clear that our current approach is inadequate for the threats we're facing." Maya considered David Chen's offer while looking around the office where her colleagues were returning to normal activities after hours of crisis management. The quiet data analyst who had spent 2 years maintaining comfortable anonymity no longer existed. In her place was someone who would be expected to lead cybersecurity operations that went far beyond conventional corporate measures. Maya realized that she faced a choice that would define the next phase of her career. She could return to federal consulting, where her capabilities would be fully utilized, but where the constant pressure and irregular schedule had previously driven her to seek corporate stability. Or she could remain at Peterson Associates and develop cybersecurity capabilities that would protect not just one company, but potentially serve as a model for other organizations facing similar threats. Maya made her decision with the same certainty that had characterized every major choice in her life. David, I'd be interested in developing a cybersecurity program that goes beyond conventional corporate measures. But it would need to include federal coordination, offensive capabilities, and authorization to engage threats at their source rather than simply defending against attacks. David Chen's expression indicated that he understood the significance of Maya's requirements. Maya, what you're describing would transform Peterson Associates' cybersecurity from a corporate function into something that resembles a military operation. Maya's response reflected her understanding of how cyber warfare was reshaping the relationship between corporate and national security. David, the distinction between corporate and military cybersecurity is becoming meaningless. Attackers, like a PT-47, use military-grade capabilities against corporate targets. The only effective response is to deploy comparable capabilities in defense of American companies and infrastructure. David Chen nodded slowly, recognizing that Maya's approach represented the future of corporate cybersecurity in an era of sophisticated state-sponsored threats. Maya, I'll discuss your proposal with senior management, but based on what I've seen today, I think Peterson Associates would benefit significantly from the kind of advanced capabilities you're describing. Maya returned to her final system checks, satisfied that she had successfully protected Peterson Associates while contributing to broader efforts to disrupt state-sponsored cyber warfare. But she also understood that her transformation from hidden expert to acknowledged leader had created expectations and responsibilities that would shape every aspect of her future work. The quiet data analyst who had wanted nothing more than stable employment and work-life balance had evolved into someone who possessed capabilities that federal agencies sought for their most complex operations. Maya had discovered that hiding her expertise hadn't eliminated her responsibility to use it when circumstances demanded. Instead, it had simply delayed the inevitable moment when she would need to acknowledge who she really was and what she was capable of accomplishing. 3 months after the PT-47 incident, Maya Johnson stood before the board of directors at Peterson Associates headquarters, presenting quarterly cybersecurity metrics that would have been impossible to achieve using conventional corporate approaches. The conference room's wall displays showed real-time monitoring of threat intelligence across 17 partner companies, automated response protocols that had prevented 43 attempted intrusions, and coordination interfaces with federal agencies that provided early warning of emerging cyber threats. Maya had been promoted to Chief Information Security Officer, a newly created position that reflected Peterson Associates' evolution from a traditional consulting firm into something resembling a cybersecurity operations center. Her team included former federal agents, military cybersecurity specialists, and advanced threat researchers who brought capabilities that most corporations couldn't access through normal hiring processes. Robert Harrison studied the quarterly metrics with satisfaction that reflected both professional achievement and strategic vindication. Ms. Johnson, your approach to cybersecurity has not only protected Peterson Associates but has also created revenue opportunities that we hadn't anticipated. Can you explain how our defensive capabilities have become a competitive advantage? Maya activated a presentation that demonstrated how Peterson Associates' advanced cybersecurity had attracted clients seeking protection that went beyond conventional corporate measures. Mr. Harrison, companies throughout the region are requesting cybersecurity consulting services that incorporate federal-level threat intelligence and offensive response capabilities. We're providing protection that most corporate cybersecurity firms can't offer because they lacked the federal connections and technical expertise required for advanced threat operations. The business transformation was remarkable. Peterson and Associates had evolved from a regional consulting firm into a cybersecurity leader that attracted clients from defense contractors, healthcare systems, and critical infrastructure companies. Maya's federal connections had enabled partnership agreements with government agencies that provided threat intelligence, technical resources, and legal authorities that elevated the company's capabilities beyond typical corporate limitations. Patricia Williams, the chief financial officer, presented financial projections that reflected the company's new strategic direction. The cybersecurity division is generating revenue that exceeds our traditional consulting services. More importantly, our reputation for advanced threat response has attracted clients who require the highest levels of protection and are willing to pay premium rates for capabilities they can't find elsewhere. Maya felt a sense of professional satisfaction that had been missing during her years of maintaining comfortable anonymity. She was using her capabilities to their fullest extent while contributing to the protection of critical infrastructure and American business interests. The stable employment and work-life balance she had originally sought remained intact, but they were now combined with meaningful work that utilized her expertise in ways that created tangible value. David Chen had become Maya's strongest advocate. Within the company, his initial resistance transformed into appreciation for capabilities that had saved Peterson and Associates from destruction while creating unprecedented business opportunities. Maya, I want to discuss expanding our threat response capabilities to include proactive hunting operations against groups that target our clients. What would that require in terms of resources and federal coordination? Maya's answer reflected strategic thinking about the evolution of corporate cybersecurity toward active defense operations. David, proactive threat hunting would require additional federal authorizations and expanded partnership agreements with international law enforcement agencies. But the capabilities would allow us to identify and disrupt attacks before they reach our clients, providing protection that goes beyond reactive measures. The conversation was interrupted by an encrypted communication from Jennifer Smith at the FBI, the kind of high-priority message that indicated emerging national security concerns. Maya read the brief text with professional attention. New. Coordinated threat detected. Multiple targets across financial sector. Federal agencies requesting Peterson and Associates assistance. Authorization pending. Maya looked up from her secure device to find the board members watching her, with expressions that reflected their understanding that critical decisions often arrived without advance notice. Mr. Harrison, federal agencies are requesting our assistance with a coordinated attack against financial institutions. This would involve deploying our capabilities beyond Peterson and Associates' direct business interests. Robert Harrison's response reflected the company's evolution from traditional consulting to national security cooperation. Ms. Johnson, Peterson and Associates has benefited significantly from federal support during our own crisis. I believe we have an obligation to provide assistance when our capabilities can contribute to broader security efforts. Maya felt a surge of professional anticipation as she realized that Peterson and Associates was being invited to participate in national security operations at the highest levels. Mr. Harrison, I'll coordinate with federal agencies to determine the scope of assistance required and the timeline for our involvement. The board meeting concluded with authorization for Maya to deploy Peterson and Associates cybersecurity capabilities in support of federal operations against threats to the financial sector. Maya understood that this authorization represented the company's complete transformation from a regional consulting firm into a strategic partner in national cybersecurity efforts. Maya returned to her office, which had been transformed into a sophisticated operations center that resembled federal cybersecurity facilities more than corporate executive spaces. Multiple secure workstations provided encrypted access to federal databases, international intelligence sharing platforms, and real-time threat monitoring systems that tracked emerging cyber threats across multiple continents. Maya's team had grown to include 12 cybersecurity specialists with backgrounds ranging from military intelligence to advanced threat research. Each team member brought capabilities that reflected the intersection of corporate cybersecurity and national security operations, skills that were increasingly necessary as cyber threats evolved beyond conventional boundaries between corporate and government targets. Maya placed a secure call to Jennifer Smith to discuss the federal request for assistance. The conversation confirmed that financial institutions across the Midwest were facing coordinated attacks that resembled a PT-47's methodology but incorporated technical innovations that suggested a different threat actor with comparable capabilities. Maya, we're dealing with what appears to be a PT-51, a group that has been operating in Southeast Asia for approximately 2 years before expanding operations to target American financial institutions. Their capabilities suggest state sponsorship, with resources that exceed most corporate defensive measures. Jennifer's briefing included technical details that confirmed Maya's assessment of the threat's sophistication. Maya reviewed the preliminary intelligence while formulating a response strategy that would leverage Peterson Associates' unique combination of corporate agility and federal authorization. Jennifer, I can deploy our team within 4 hours. We'll need secure communications, access to federal threat intelligence databases, and coordination with international law enforcement for any cross-border operations. Jennifer's response indicated the priority that federal agencies were assigning to the coordinated attacks. Maya, you have full authorization for offensive countermeasures and international coordination. The financial sector attacks represent a potential threat to economic stability that justifies deployment of all available resources. Maya assembled her team for an emergency briefing that would initiate Peterson and Associates' first major cybersecurity operation beyond defending their own company. The conference room filled with cybersecurity specialists who brought diverse expertise from federal agencies, military units, and advanced research organizations. Team, we're facing a PT-51, a state-sponsored group conducting coordinated attacks against financial institutions across the Midwest. Federal agencies have requested our assistance in identifying, tracking, and neutralizing this threat. Maya activated displays that showed preliminary intelligence about a PT-51's capabilities and previous operations. Michael Rodriguez, Maya's deputy and former NSA analyst, studied the threat intelligence with professional interest. Maya, a PT-51's attack patterns suggest they've learned from a PT-47's failure. They're using more sophisticated encryption, distributed command structures, and advanced persistent threats that incorporate artificial intelligence for automated decision-making. Maya nodded acknowledgement of the increased threat sophistication, while recognizing that Peterson and Associates' capabilities had also evolved significantly since the APT-47 incident. Michael, our response capabilities have advanced as well. We have federal authorization for offensive operations, international coordination agreements, and technical resources that weren't available during our previous operation. The team spent 2 hours developing a comprehensive response strategy that incorporated lessons learned from the PT-47 operation while adapting to a PT-51's enhanced capabilities. The plan included coordinated intelligence gathering, simultaneous strikes against multiple target systems, and international law enforcement coordination that would prevent the attackers from simply relocating their operations to different countries. Maya's strategy reflected the evolution of corporate cybersecurity from defensive measures to coordinated offensive operations that resembled military campaigns more than traditional business activities. Peterson and Associates would coordinate with federal agencies, international partners, and private sector allies to conduct operations that would permanently disrupt a PT-51's capabilities, while protecting financial institutions across multiple states. The operation began with Maya's team deploying to a secure federal facility where they could coordinate with government, cybersecurity specialists, and access classified intelligence databases. Maya felt familiar satisfaction as she returned to the kind of high-stakes federal operations that had originally defined her career, but with the added confidence that came from leading a team she had personally trained and equipped. Maya realized that her transformation from hidden expert to acknowledged leader had created something unexpected, a career that combined the meaningful work and advanced capabilities of federal consulting with the stability and strategic autonomy of corporate leadership. She was using her expertise to protect American interests while building an organization that could continue providing advanced cybersecurity services long after any individual operation concluded. The quiet data analyst who had sought anonymity and work-life balance had evolved into someone who led operations that protected critical infrastructure and economic stability. Maya had discovered that hiding her capabilities hadn't eliminated her responsibility to use them. It had simply delayed the moment when circumstances would demand that she acknowledge her true potential and accept the obligations that came with exceptional expertise. As Maya's team initiated their coordinated response against Apt-51, she understood that Peterson Associates had become something unprecedented, a corporate organization with federal-level cybersecurity capabilities that could respond to threats requiring coordination between government agencies and private sector resources. Maya had created not just a job that utilized her skills, but a model for how American companies could contribute to national security while building sustainable competitive advantages. Maya looked around the Federal Operations Center where her team was coordinating with government specialists, recognizing that she had achieved something that had seemed impossible 3 months earlier. Meaningful work that utilized her capabilities to their fullest extent, while providing the stability and strategic autonomy that had originally drawn her to corporate employment. The transformation was complete. Maya Johnson had evolved from an overlooked analyst into a leader whose capabilities were recognized and utilized at the highest levels of American cybersecurity operations. She had proven that expertise combined with determination could overcome any obstacle, and that the most significant achievements often came from people who had been underestimated by those around them. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.